Once I learned about neuroplasticity and I studied neuroplasticity, I realized, holy cow, I could rewire my brain out of disability thinking. What the actual? And I realized that I was operating from this place, and I was still operating from victim consciousness. And all that had to drop. Right? Brain training was such a huge part of my journey, and it still is. Rewiring the neural pathways to create new habits and new thought processes. Learning to control my thoughts. This podcast is called Reconditioned because this is the place where you'll learn how to truly recondition your entire life. Where other wellness podcasts or platforms focus on one particular area of wellness or inner growth, Reconditioned is a one-stop shop for all of it, so that you can get all the information you need to heal and up-level the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects of your life in one place. Because that's what I needed when I was healing from the arthritis I had from the age of 2 that left me disabled by 18. I got myself to a place of complete wellness after a very long journey of immersion into the world of healing, where I learned how to heal the whole self. My purpose now is about bringing that to you, and my Rise membership is an extension of that. For women who want to take their wellness and growth to the next level, there really is nothing out there like it. You'll be part of a global community of like-minded women with access to 14 modules that literally take you through everything you ever need to learn in order to bring your life to a place of balance and abundance. With group coaching calls with me, personalized support, community book club, and so much more. Rise becomes part of your life, your lifestyle, enabling you to thrive in the ways you always dreamed, with me right there beside you, championing you through your journey. It's not always open for enrollment, so if you're hearing this now, it's open and ready for you to enroll. Just go to the show notes for the link or visit laurenvakneen.co.uk/rise. Hi everyone, welcome back. So good to have you here. So after last week's episode, which was about it was the audio of my TEDx talk all about my journey towards healing the arthritis I had since I was 2. That talk got banned for speaking about healing holistically. So after that, I thought I would do an episode all about what that journey actually looked like. So since I've shared the talk on my YouTube and social media, I've had so many people reach out to ask a bunch of questions about my journey. And the truth is, it's really hard to answer questions of how did you do it in a message or even in a TED talk, because the journey was so multifaceted. And newsflash, that's why it worked. Because I didn't just do one thing, I did all the things. And by the way, for those wondering and those truly wanting to heal and go down a journey with whether it's your emotional, your mental, your physical, your spiritual growth, that's what my Rise membership is for, to give you all the steps required to heal a whole person in one place. Because when I was looking for that, it didn't exist. And that's why it took me over a decade. So what I did was I put it all in one place so that other women on this journey could access everything they needed to heal in one place. So that's there for you over on my website when you get where you get all the content and all the support you need on your journey. And in your meantime, right here, I'm going to take you through exactly what my healing journey looked like, step by step. And before we go into that, I just wanted to read out another testimonial from one of my incredible Rise members, because I love reading these out, and this testimonial was just gorgeous. So, and excuse the noises from my dog coming from to the left of me. So this is from Stacey, and as you can actually see the video of this on my Rise membership page on my website. Okay, so Stacey says, I joined Lauren's Rise membership and I'm here to say that 12 months later, my life has changed beyond recognition. When I started this course, I was in such a big, deep, dark hole. My parenting, my relationship, my career, I was on complete burnout. A friend of mine had done the course, and I remember her walking in one day and the energy that was coming off her. I was like, what have you done? So not long after, I signed up. I won't say I found it easy. I won't say I was racing through it every day, but what I did do was something nearly every day. And at the end of it, everything I journaled, I look back at I looked back about 6 months later and everything I wrote about changed. My job, my parenting, I'm studying something I love, and now I'm on a new path. I manifested all this and it just keeps coming. I'm forever grateful and have no doubt that had I not done this course, my life wouldn't be where it is now. Oh, I love these testimonials so much. How gorgeous is that? Honestly, guys, the Rise membership isn't a quick program that you do and maybe it will help one thing in your life if you're lucky. It's a lifestyle and it changes lives. And I created it to give you the level of healing you're going to hear about now that I'm going to tell you about my own journey. It works. And I'd love you to come join the community and do this with us. It's at laurenvakneen.co.uk/rise. Fun fact, humans take in more information in one day now than they did in their entire lives in the 1700s. No wonder we're overwhelmed. Our brains and bodies simply haven't evolved to manage this level of stress. And until that evolution happens, if we want to be well in mind and body, we need things that help alleviate this stress. For me, one of the key tools in my daily wellness toolkit that does this is the Sensate. And if you've been here a while, you'll know how genuinely obsessed I am with this product. It is a piece of health tech that fits in the palm of your hand, and it basically sends infrasonic waves through the chest to activate the vagus nerve and calm the autonomic nervous system while you listen to the specially composed audio within the app. I usually use the Sensate for 10 to 20 minutes before I sleep to reduce cortisol levels, calm my brainwave states from the hectic day, and send me into a deep sleep. Clients or friends of mine who have a Sensate have told me that their sleep has never been so good. People who usually struggle with sleep just wake up in the same position they went to sleep in. Everyone needs a Sensate, in my opinion, and I particularly recommend it to anyone who suffers from overwhelm or anxiety, and anyone who wants to deepen their meditation practice. And you can get £30 off the Sensate by visiting getsensate.com and using code Lauren30. That's GETSENSATE.com, Lauren30. Thank you so much to Sensate for supporting our mission here at Reconditioned. Okay, so let's get started with my step-by-step guide to how I healed. Now, firstly, just a reminder that healing journeys come with a lot of nuance, right? I've learned that pretty much nothing other than some mathematics is black and white. Nothing's black and white. Everything has nuance to it, which is the exact reason allopathic medicine doesn't work to heal chronic illness, because it treats the disease, not the person. And it doesn't take the whole person and all their history into account. Right? The studies conducted to create these medications don't do that either, by the way. They don't ask the people, and trust me, I have been looking into medical research for about 17 years now. I taught myself how to read medical studies and how to seek out the flaws in it. And I've spoken to doctors, professors, all sorts of things along the way to help me in this journey, because it always felt like there were missing pieces. And these studies don't even ask the people taking it to all eat the same food and sleep the same amount of time and test their genes and a bunch of other stuff that's really needed in order to make sure that something is solid and understood, right? These studies are flawed from the beginning. So when a study comes out and says, yes, it's safe and it works, the percentages and the amount of bias behind that it's really something we all need to be looking into and understanding more. And I just want to say that if you're listening to this thinking, well, I'm taking medications and it controls my chronic condition just fine. Yeah, perhaps it can control it for a while. But I'm talking about root cause long-term healing. And that can only happen when the body is in a place of balance, of homeostasis. And by the way, this is no judgment towards you and your journey, because you're where you need to be and where you want to be. But you're obviously listening to this because it's not fully working for you and you're wanting something more. And my work is about healing. So I'm going to give you what I know about healing, not what I know about illness, right? And this is about my personal journey to healing using a holistic approach and what I learned through being failed by the medical system, which, by the way, was the best thing that happened to me because it pushed me to look for the answers. And to teach myself to be an advocate for myself, to be sovereign, to take responsibility for my healing. And we'll get to that later. Okay, so let's start with the beginning. And if we want to speak about nuance, it starts right at the beginning with the fact that there wasn't just one thing that caused it. And I say cause in quote marks. Yes, as if overnight my ankle swelled with fluid and I was diagnosed with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis a month before my second birthday. But the catalyst that triggered it was also made more possible because of all the other factors leading up to that. So let's start with that word cause. So I don't think something can cause anything, right? In health, there are a myriad things that can contribute to triggering disease, but not causing it, right? Because people always say to me, what was the thing that caused it? So here's what I've put the autoimmune trigger in me to come down to. So firstly, when my mum gave birth to me, because birth plays a massive part in our long-term health, by the way, she got a virus and she came up in boils all over her body and she couldn't breastfeed me or even hold me. So firstly, I wasn't getting the essential nutrients to prime the gut and support the immune system with breastfeeding. And I also wasn't getting that fourth trimester microbiome passed over from mother to baby, which also helps prime the microbiome of the baby to support immune health. Now, all of that can be managed in a baby who doesn't have a genetic predisposition to autoimmunity. This is where it comes in, the nuance. But I did. But we didn't know I did, right? How can we know? And let's be clear about epigenetics. It is not the fault of the gene. We all have many gene mutations or polymorphisms within us that never get triggered. Epigenetics is the effect of our environment on our genes, not the genes themselves, which is what geneticists originally thought was the cause of illness. And that's why the lifestyles we raise our kids in is the absolute most important factor in whether they'll get sick, not the genes themselves. So we had the virus. We had the not being held, the microbiome issue, no breastfeeding. And then at 18 months, I got given the measles rubella vaccine. The MMR only came out about 2 years later in 1988. And the next day I came out with virus-like symptoms. And within 10 days after that, the joints started swelling. So the vaccine wasn't the sole cause. It was a contributing factor amongst others that led to that moment. And it was the catalyst that triggered the autoimmune response. Now, I'm not going to get into the subject of vaccines here because that's not what this episode is about. And there's an episode dedicated to that with Dr. Lawrence Palevsky, which you can listen to if you want to. And I highly recommend doing so. It's episode 72. So after that, the GP had no idea what it was. My parents heard the term growing pains a lot. And my mum just knew that that's not what it was. And when no one could figure out why this tiny, not even 2-year-old had huge amounts of fluid in her ankles and knees, I was booked in for a biopsy. And luckily for me, before I went down for the procedure, the consultant came up to see me first and he took one look at me and told my mum she doesn't need a biopsy, she has Still's disease, which is what it used to be called by some back then. And I went on to be diagnosed with juvenile idiopathic arthritis. Idiopathic meaning no defined cause, which again is not true because everything has a cause. It's just the medical model in its binary view of things when they can't put the pieces together. And that's what my journey has been about, putting all these pieces together. So the doctors wanted to put me on steroids, and they were suggesting at the time that very high doses of oral steroids is what would knock it on the head essentially. And my mum just had this niggle that made it feel not right. She knew nothing, by the way, about holistic medicine. She left school at 15. She really didn't have an education on much, but she listened to her gut telling her not to put this stuff in her 2-year-old. And instead she took herself to the library and she emerged 3 days later having decided on homeopathy as our route forward. And the doctors told her she would be the reason I would end up with joint deformities and joint damage and worse. And when I think about it now from the perspective of a parent, I honestly don't know how she kept her resolve when she was being met with that level of authority in those days. She's just so strong and always was, and I'll always know that she saved my life in that way. So my parents gathered all the money they could and took me to a homeopathic dietitian. And he gave me remedies and put me on a strict diet, which was really a lot harder in the 80s because there weren't substitutes like there are today. And it was really hard for my mum not to give me certain foods. So again, this is where nuance comes in. So when people say, so why didn't the homeopathy cure you then? Well, we didn't have the full picture. The homeopath at the time didn't ask about vaccines, so he didn't detox that. And perhaps if he'd have known to detox the mercury especially, maybe things would have got better, who knows? Also, my parents did the best they could with the resources they had, but they didn't have any access to other information. So they gave me the homeopathy and followed the diet instructions, but then we drink Diet Cokes and eat chocolate and toxic sugar-free squashes. And so all that would contribute. And it wasn't being detoxed of the very thing that created the root cause in the first place. The microbiome that hadn't developed fully because of my early days, my early entry into this world, that microbiome wasn't being treated, right? So there's so much nuance to it. Now, what the homeopathy did do is ensure that I developed properly and that the arthritis didn't damage any joints or start affecting my organs. Now, I had an associated eye condition called uveitis, which I was diagnosed with a year after the arthritis diagnosis. And I had steroid eye drops for that, and I'd sometimes have to have steroid injected into the joints as well. But other than that, we were managing things as naturally as we could. Now, as I started getting older, we started noticing differences between me and the other kids in my weekly hydro class. I wasn't healed or cured, no, but I was growing properly and I looked normal. Believe it or not, I was the anomaly. The other kids all had stunted growth, so both in their height and also in their limbs. So often they would have shorter, like their arms would look really short or like shorter than they should. And they started getting joint deformities and needing joint replacements, and the girls didn't get their periods. And as time went on, a couple of them even died from complications from the meds, which was extremely devastating. So next to my school friends, I wasn't exactly normal. Like there were lots of things I couldn't do, but next to my arthritis friends, I was visibly doing much better than any of them. And we had to look at that and assess why. And that's kind of what kept us going on the journey we were on. Now, I did have many steroid injections into the joints and even into the eye over the years. And there was a lot of trauma associated with that. But again, that's another story. So to fast forward a bit, I get to 17, go to performing arts school, and all of a sudden I have this huge flare up and I couldn't perform in the end of term play. And the ophthalmologist said that the eye had grown multiple cataracts as a result of the years of inflammation and steroid eye drops. And these were pushing against the optic nerve and making the pressure drop dangerously low. And for those who've heard this story, I'm really sorry. I'm just feeling like I need to kind of tell a little bit of the background for those who haven't heard my full story and are here hoping for the kind of step-by-step guide. I feel like the background's really important. So if you do know the whole story, feel free to fast forward a little bit, but it might interest you anyway. So I needed to have the cataracts removed, but they couldn't operate while there was so much activity in the eye because it was too dangerous and because the joints were too swollen too. So I was advised to take a chemo-based drug that they'd wanted me to be a guinea pig for when I was 9, and my mum at the time had refused. But I was nearly 18 now. I was very arrogant and angry that my life was coming to a halt just when it was starting. And I was like, well, this homeopathy has done nothing for me my whole life. What's it done for me? As teenagers will be. And I made a decision to start taking the drug. And within 10 months of taking it, I lost a bunch of hair. It damaged my liver, leaving me extremely ill. And the arthritis had spread from where it had remained in just those 4 joints for all those years to the whole body, like literally every single joint. My fingers, my hips, my neck, my jaw, everything. I couldn't walk, I couldn't grip cutlery, I couldn't feed myself, couldn't even take myself to the toilet. And the rheumatologist literally didn't bat an eyelid when my mum wheeled me into her office in a wheelchair. She just said to us that the drug works for 70% of people and doesn't work for the other 30%. And it was totally normal to her that I was in a wheelchair. How I felt at the time was like this light bulb moment of, oh, she didn't see it going any other way because she's never seen it going any other way. And if she's never seen it going the other way, any other way, and no one ever really gets cured, and the drugs sometimes just mask the inflammation and the pain, then clearly these drugs don't work and this approach doesn't work. And it was this light bulb moment, and I was only 18, but I knew in that moment that the medical world was never going to be able to heal me. I knew that I had to do that. And I vowed in that moment to make it happen. One of the holistic living challenges I spent years researching and trying to figure out was how to keep teeth healthy without fluoride and which fluoride-free natural toothpaste to use. I've found a few over the years that I've liked, but I've finally found a brand that does a toothpaste that me and my husband love, and a kids one that not only has all the perfect ingredients to keep their teeth and gums healthy naturally, but that they love. The toothpastes are by Wellness, which is the brand created by Katie Wells, aka Wellness Mama, who we love here at Reconditioned. I'm such a fan of these toothpastes, and I would love you to give them a go. And no, they're not as cheap as Colgate, and for good reason. But you can get 10% off by visiting health.com/LaurenV10. That's health with an F, HEALF.com/LaurenV10. And that will apply a 10% discount to anything in your basket, not just wellness products. Please report back to me and let me know how you find these toothpastes. So, here's where I started. The very first thing I did was I went back to my homeopath, one I'd been seeing for years, who was incredible. She was also a Reiki master. She was so much more. And if you're looking for a homeopath, I always recommend, and there are amazing classical homeopaths out there, don't get me wrong, and homeopathy does work because it treats the person, not the disease. But I've always had the best results when working with homeopaths that are trained in other things as well. And they understand the nuance of healing, and that there are many different ways and like modalities that you can use together. So we were working together to heal my insides from the chemotherapy firstly, like that was the first thing, let's start the detox. And at the same time, I started meditating, right? So those were my first steps. My mum's friend, who's a healer, she came around with literally a cassette tape. It was that long ago, it was 2002. A cassette tape of Brandon Bay's The Journey. It was the first meditation I ever did. I will always be so grateful for it. I still have it on my favorites in my YouTube, favorites album. And I still listen to it, and it doesn't put me back in this it does put me back on that armchair that I would sit on all day long. And I would do the meditation on that armchair, unable to move. But it doesn't make me feel bad. It doesn't kind of put me back in trauma. I just love it so much because I remember listening to it that first time and thinking, wow, this is so amazing that something can help me relax and tune into something beyond me and understand my mind and understand my body, and that there is healing available beyond what I can see. So I love that meditation. I highly recommend looking it up. It is on YouTube. So I started meditating daily. But meditating was also very hard for me because I was so angry. So I'd meditate while being in excruciating pain and filled with so much anger that I had to turn down my place at uni, that my friends were either at uni or traveling, and I couldn't get out of bed or, use a remote control properly. And I'd also put myself through huge amounts of trauma the 2 years prior by getting involved with the wrong people and taking drugs and ending up in an abusive relationship. And all of that I eventually realized was my way of trying to escape what I knew was happening to my body because I could feel it coming on. I was like, let me smoke more weed to dull the pain, and let me do other drugs to try and make me feel better about myself. So, all that stuff I'm sure also contributed to the health declining at that point as quickly as it did. And obviously mingling with that chemo drug, everything is nuanced, everything. There's so many facets to every part of a dis-ease and healing journey. So I went to anger management. That was the next step. And I'm not suggesting to go to anger management because I actually think there are more 360 approaches to therapy and to emotional work. But this was 2002 and someone recommended her, and there still wasn't really internet. There was internet, but we didn't really access it for information. So I went and did that. And I saw this really sweet lady who started talking to me about things like trauma and what stress and anger do to the body and how it's held in the body. And that was really my introduction to understanding that everything that was happening to me was happening to my whole self. And I wouldn't be able to heal until I healed not just my physical body, but my emotional, mental, and spiritual self too. So then at 19, completely wheelchair bound and unable to chew food, literally, I moved to Israel to have treatment with a doctor who created something called IPEC therapy, which is integrated physical emotional clearing. So he was a doctor, medical doctor, who studied Chinese medicine and other modalities, and he decided to integrate them into one. It was incredible. And again, another way of being shown how we have to energetically remove things from the body. So he used tapping and kinesiology and magnets and crystals to remove whatever we were working on at any given day. And I went to him twice a week for 5 months, and every one of those times he was working on something different. So he was using kinesiology to ask my body what we needed to remove from the body or allow the body to be able to tolerate better, or like all things like that. It could be metal, it could be wheat, it could be, any water even, it could be air. And he has like all these little components in like hundreds of boxes that you hold while he does the tapping with the magnets and the crystals and a whole bunch of other stuff to remove it from the body. It was quite fascinating and really was my initiation into somatic healing. So within 3 weeks, I was walking again. And within 3 months, I was riding a bike along the beach. And yeah, it was quite incredible to see the rapid rate of healing available to us when we work to heal the whole person. So I came home after 6 months, and because I was 20, and I was a 20-year-old who just lost 2 years of her life, I started trying to get my acting career off the ground, and I partied and basically lived however I wanted to live because I'd lost all this time. And I just wanted to enjoy my life. But the pains and inflammation started coming back after a year. I basically did all of that, lived how I wanted to live for a year. And I wouldn't say it was excessive for a normal 20-year-old. That's how 20-year-olds live. But I wasn't living in what we would call, a healing state. This wasn't conducive to healing. But I didn't understand at that point, right? I still wasn't deep enough into my journey at 20 years old to understand what healing actually meant. That healing meant maintenance. That healing meant going deep. That healing didn't mean just going and seeing someone, getting them to do something about it for you, and then you going and doing whatever the hell you want. So the pains and inflammation started coming back, and I got very victimy about it. And I cried a lot, and I said, why me? And then when I couldn't afford to go back to Israel because my parents had taken out a loan the first time for me to do it, the most amazing thing happened, the most amazing shift. I realized that I could go back to him every time. But then what about in between? What, in between I was just going to keep having these flare-ups? What was happening was that I wasn't taking responsibility for my own well-being. I was giving it over to someone else. I was outsourcing my health. And I had to learn how to heal myself. So I didn't go and study IPEC. I started studying everything, as is true to my nature. If anyone is into human design at all, I'm a manifester. I'm a true manifester. Just like get on it instantly and just, immerse. And that's what I did. I immersed myself in self-study. So nutrition, neuroplasticity, epigenetics, you name it, I got into it. And obviously not all in one day. One thing led on to another slowly. And I'm not going to go into all the things I studied and what they taught me because honestly, this episode will be far too long. I want to tell you what I did and how I did it because I think that's what you're here for. So the only thing I will spend some time on is this. In learning about epigenetics, I was able to understand exactly what the root causes of the onset of illness were, as I explained at the beginning. And I was also able to understand why that drug that I took affected me so much worse than others. I learned that I had the MTHFR gene polymorphism, which was the reason why the vaccine affected me so much when it didn't affect others, and why the drug and the synthetic folic acid that they give you alongside it damaged my liver. Again, this is a really long topic, but I do have some articles about it on the website and I'll link them here. So make sure to go to the show notes. There'll be a lot of stuff on the show notes for you today. But it's exactly this that's the reason that most people don't heal. They're not looking outside the box. beneath the surface? What else is lurking in the body? Toxins, genes, anything else that could be causing your body to react like this. So I literally had to become a detective. I had to become a professor of everything and teach myself like everything about health and work backwards to find the answers, because no one was doing it for me, right? I could go to the doctors however many times I wanted, and it was like, take this drug, go into this pain management specialist. No one was actually finding answers. And so I felt very alone as well. It was very isolating. There was no internet, like I said. It just was me figuring stuff out as I went along. And eventually, slowly, I started integrating this information, and the right information made its way to me. And it took me years, right? It took years to get to the point where it all started integrating and started working. So here's what I did. So firstly, I got my nutrition sorted, right? I cut gluten, I cut dairy, I cut refined sugar, and that's where I started with nutrition. I did that for 2 whole years. No alcohol, because my liver was damaged and wouldn't be able to heal unless I was completely devoted to its healing. And obviously I understood that alcohol, wasn't going to be allowing any part of my body and the cells of my body to rejuvenate as they should. And within time, and honestly, this took years, I learned that I could have organic raw dairy, but never commercial dairy, because the cows have been injected with growth hormones and steroids and antibiotics, and they were eating grass that had pesticides in it, not to mention the way that they were kept, the way they lived increased their stress, which impacted the food. So eventually I started drinking raw organic dairy and natural yogurt and lots of butter for the good butter fats, which help us absorb fat-soluble vitamins like A, D, and K, but never non-organic commercial dairy. So I then realized the importance of organic food. So this was the next step, right? First it was gluten, dairy, sugar. That was the first step. And then it was organic. Because what I learned was that everything we eat that isn't organic is grown using pesticides and carcinogenic chemicals like glyphosate. So I started looking into the effects of this and what it had been proven to do to people. And then it all made sense. I ate as much as I could organic at that point. And at that point, I also cut meat and I went veggie for 8 years, thinking that this was the healthiest option, because at that time, that's, what healthy people did. They went plant-based. Actually, this was before it was trendy, but eventually I realized that my genes, how they are, what my body needs, B12, and how I absorb things, just based on really going down the rabbit hole of those genes tests and understanding my personal genetic makeup, I realized I needed meat. So I reintroduced meat, but only from a very specific farm that not only truly is as organic as it gets, but they even regenerate their own soil. So for anyone that's interested, by the way, again, I'll put that in the show notes. They're called Primal Meats. I'm obsessed with them. I love them. There is a discount code there as well. So sorry to interrupt the episode, but this really is a public health service announcement. If you're trying to improve or optimize your health, you might be missing the crucial ingredient that most people don't realize they need. You see, it's not vitamin D you need to be supplementing. The mineral we are most lacking and need so much more of in order to be able to synthesize that vitamin D from the sun is copper. Without copper, which gives us retinol, we literally cannot absorb the fat-soluble vitamins A, D, and K. And the iron in our bodies is not distributed effectively because copper is what transports iron around the blood. So it's not that we're anemic, it's that we are low in copper. Without adequate absorption of all these minerals, your health can never be optimal. So many people I've worked with feel like they've tried everything, and simply introducing Recuperate IQ, which is a very specific formulation of copper and other ingredients, improved their health within weeks. It's formulated by Morley Robbins, who created the root cause protocol that hundreds of thousands of people around the world have healed as a result of. I've personally been doing it for 8 years. This supplement is finally available in the UK after years of me trying to get hold of it, and you can now get it at yourhealthbasket.co.uk using code LaurenV10 for a 10% discount. That's yourhealthbasket.co.uk and code LaurenV10. So I went down the plant-based route just before that was trendy and got out of it, I think, just before it was trendy to be a meat eater again. And how I eat now is like this, because this is something that people ask me a lot. So let me break it down for you. I eat anything that is real and organic. So I don't eat man-made foods, nothing processed, very little refined sugar or gluten. Actually, very little natural sugar. I do have honey and some fruits. I don't overdo it with fruit, but I think there are a lot of nutrients in a lot of fruits. No commercial dairy, no preservatives or anything else that hasn't been made, grown or reared by Mother Nature. I do eat what I want when I go out for dinner because I can now. I was very strict for a long time while I was healing my gut and my body generally, which I think is important. You have to be strict when you're in that healing state. But you also have to enjoy your food, right? Like, food nourishes the soul as well as the body. This is something I talk about a lot on the Rise membership. A lot of my ladies are on, specific diets because of where they're at with their health, healing, autoimmunity, healing SIBO, candida. I've got all sorts of ladies on the Rise membership. And we talk about how we can find that balance of enjoying food and nourishing the soul as well as the body, because so much of how the food will nourish you is about how you feel about it while you're eating it. So I think that's really important. So I'd say I'm about 85-15 in terms of, the 15% when I eat out, when I go to other people's houses, stuff like that. Like when I go on holiday, I wouldn't say I stick to a diet, but I prefer healthy food. So I'm more likely to go, if I'm by the sea, to a restaurant and get, some grilled fish and amazing, lovely, fresh vegetables and stuff like that. So I might have an ice cream every so often, but I wouldn't do that every day. I'm at the point where my body tells me what it wants, and I don't ever feel the need for overindulging to the point that it wouldn't feel good. But I also kind of it's a balance, I guess. It's really, really a balance, getting to that point where you know your body so well, so you know how you can feed it, right? And again, like, food is such a complicated subject. We do speak about it a lot on the Rise membership, and we spend a lot of time there to try and, give the ladies that support they need with it. So then what was the next step? I introduced specific supplements. It took me a long time to figure supplements out, right? And figure out because everyone would tell you need something different. And I'm really a fan of getting what you can from food, and what you can't get from food, you supplement. So I spent a long time learning about supplements and getting it right. But the first ones, which I still stand by now, were a good probiotic, magnesium, and cod liver oil. And at that time, I also took curcumin for the anti-inflammatory properties. And over time, I've taken boron, glutathione, NAD+, vitamin C, vitamin D, B complex, so many others, but really always depending on what my bloods were saying or what I was feeling at any given time. So right now, for example, I take magnesium and cod liver oil, which are my constant non-negotiables. And I also take reishi medicinal mushroom supplement. I take whole food vitamin C, lignin plus hormone support, beef liver capsules, and a few herbal things. And it's really always a very personalized approach. And that is what I stand by with supplements. So, when clients ask me what supplements they should take, I never just tell people take this and take that. It has to be a personalized approach. We have to know your history, what your goals are with your body, what your bloods are saying. And even if the information is available, like about your genes. So yeah, supplements should really be a personalized thing, but that's where I was with it and where I'm at now. So the next thing I did, I said I was working with a homeopath, and we did a lot of work on a lot of things, especially detoxing the chemo, because that was going to have a lot of long-term side effects that were going to affect me in many ways. And it was damaging my liver. It damaged my liver. So we really worked on that for a long time. But later on, we started detoxing the vaccines as well. So this is like decades after having the vaccines. But realizing that I had high levels of mercury and aluminium in me. So This took a long time. It required perseverance and working really closely with my homeopath. I still work really closely with my homeopath for me and my kids. She's like literally my first port of call for everything. And that, by the way, is if my own tools at home aren't enough, okay? Because I've armed myself with an arsenal of tools for healing, you know, and that's the point. Like, let's empower ourselves in our own home so our kids see that we see ourselves as, you know, our own primary healthcare providers. So, but, you know, when I don't have the tools at home, my homeopath is always my first port of call for anything going on with me or the kids. So I did a complete gut cleanse and overhaul, which I did over time because I didn't have the funds back then to go all in, you know, all the supplements and the water-based probiotics and the juices and all the things. So that took quite a while. Firstly, to implement fully, but also to learn about enough to understand how to do it properly. And so I was cleansing my gut over a good few years. So yeah, then over time I started having red light therapy, the occasional Myers cocktail IV drip when my immunity was low. I started by buying myself a small red light lamp, like a really cheap version, which I used on the joints that were hurting, you know, whenever I needed to. And eventually I built up to buy myself a full body red light panel, which I now have. One of the most important things was I reduced my exposure to toxicity through food, water, everything else, reducing EMFs in my home and anything else I could do to ensure that toxins were as low as they could be. Realizing that toxic load really is the one thing we need to master was key, absolute key, right? Essentially, if you keep putting more and more toxins in your body, eventually your liver stops being able to flush them out. And I love the bathtub analogy for toxic load. So if you were to turn on the tap in your bath and leave the plug open, the water would just continue draining down. But now if you start, and it doesn't matter how long you leave the tap open, the water would keep draining down. But if you start putting into that bathtub sludge and tar and just other things that shouldn't go into a bathtub, that the drain wasn't designed to filter through, no matter how effective your drain is, eventually it will stop being able to flush it through and the bath will overflow. Overflow is the metaphor for onset of illness. So whatever you're genetically predisposed to will get triggered when the body no longer has the capacity to keep it away. And that's why it's not about the genes we're predisposed to, it's about the effect of our environment on those genes. So I was doing all of this, but I was still probably only halfway there. So at that point, I went back to the emotional. I started fully processing the trauma of a lifetime of disease and what a childhood with that was like. I worked with my inner child. I reparented her. I helped her to heal. I somatically removed the trauma from my body time and time again whenever I needed to, removing stagnant energy of that particular thing and doing my best to then choose to move on from it. Again, this is work I have practiced and refined over the years. It's another thing we do in the academy, in the Rise membership. I worked on my shadow, understanding that I couldn't possibly heal until I saw all of me, warts and all, and integrated that. It was a huge part. People don't realize how big shadow work is. I thought I was something, and actually I was something else. I thought I was showing up in one way, and actually people were seeing me in a completely different way because they were seeing the me that I wasn't yet seeing, right? So I had to see all of that and heal all of that. A massive moment was this. And if you're new-ish on your holistic healing journey, please listen to this. When I started going deep down the rabbit hole of research and study, I came across things that made me angry. I was angry that no one was talking about vaccines, that no one tested kids before they gave them one, or that no one tested me before they gave me a chemo drug to know that I had MTHFR, and so it would make me very sick. I was angry about big food and big pharma and everything else, and I shouted that anger from the rooftops. Now, I've been around long enough to see this journey with other people, and I think it's part of the evolutionary process of someone going into a journey of holistic healing. But the peace came when I dropped that frustration and, more importantly, dropped the fear. Because if you're not in love, you're in fear. And my anger was from a place of fear, right? Fear of what this stuff was doing to all of us. And I realized that this is my journey. It's happened like this for a reason. And there are even energetic, big picture reasons behind why big industry controls stuff and wants us sick. Right now, going deeper onto my spiritual journey, I can see that. So I let go of all of it. I no longer care. I heal myself and my family and offer this information and this knowledge to others who want it, who are seeking it, and I focus on that. I let everything play out how it's meant to. Everything else I don't have control over, I let it play out how it's meant to, right? Not everyone is ready or on the journey that they want to hear this, and that is okay too. And I don't try and reach those people. So if you're at that point of anger and frustration now, save yourself the years of headache that I had and drop it now. Now, it doesn't mean you're not dedicated to finding solutions or to helping heal the collective, but you don't need to live in fear and project that upon other people. It is the lowest vibration you can operate at, and actually it prevents your healing. So next came the brain training. Once I learned about neuroplasticity and I studied neuroplasticity, I realized, holy cow, I could rewire my brain out of disability thinking. What the actual? And I realized that I was operating from this place, and I was still operating from victim consciousness. And all that had to drop, right? Brain training was such a huge part of my journey, and it still is. Rewiring the neural pathways to create new habits and new thought processes. Learning to control my thoughts. Learning that I could control my thoughts. There's a choice. The thoughts we keep in our brain, in our head, is actually a choice, because there is a mind that controls that, right? And we are the mind, we are not the brain. And learning to not get stuck in the dense frequencies of frustration and victimhood and even trauma. I could make a choice to let it all go. So that was deep, right? Again, teach that on the Rise membership. That's huge, one of the favorite modules. Next was my spiritual practice, which I've been developing since that time 22 years ago when my mum's friend gave me the cassette tape. And I've been meditating ever since. And since then, I've studied multiple meditation methods, transcendental meditation, chakra meditation, kundalini yoga, chanting, so many. And I've been on a shamanic apprenticeship for 3.5 years now. And that's taken my spiritual journey to depths I never knew existed, which has helped my own healing, but it also enables me to provide so much more to my clients in guiding them, in that how much more I kind of see it and get it now, And I've been really fortunate enough to have incredible spiritual teachers along the way, and now working with my shaman is the biggest blessing of my life. So the spiritual really is the icing on the cake that solidifies the rest of the work. And by the way, one point I missed out was that one of the first things my mum did was take me to a spiritual healer. My grandparents were spiritualists, so this kind of wasn't, voodoo to them, even in the 80s. And I truly believe that played a huge part in my healing journey, in the way that it enabled me, again, to see that there was something bigger and deeper, right? My parents weren't relying on a doctor who had a set of drugs that he can provide, and beyond that, there was nothing that was in our control. Seeing spiritual healers put their hands on me and seeing energy come out of their heads literally as a child, and have them speak to me about energy and about what healing actually is, and go to multiple healers over the course of my childhood and start learning it myself and start being able to do it myself, which I did from the age of 7, being able to tap into those gifts and what was in the ether, that there was so much more out there, just that enables healing in itself. When you know that there is something else at play that is so much deeper than any drug or any doctor can do, and that you have the ability to almost manipulate energy through your own thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, that is empowering for children. That's so empowering. I teach my kids this all the time. So I drum it into them that they're the masters of their destiny, that something happens, don't go looking for a doctor. What do we have here that we can do, that we can help ourselves heal? So that played a huge part, still plays, my spiritual practice is the most important part of my day. So other factors in the maintenance of my remission are being very close to nature and walking and being in nature every day, constant gratitude and upholding a feeling of abundance, because when you see yourself as abundant, you become abundant, whether that is in health, in finances, in love, in whatever it is, but you can't be abundant without first being abundant, right? Breath work. I am big on breathwork practices. I think breath is life. How can we go through our day when we're trying to heal and not actually put deep, solid, conscious, energized breath into the body? And sitting in the silence. So I spoke about my meditation practice. How that looks for me today is very different to how it looked to me 22 years ago when I started. But sitting in the silence is really what my meditation practice looks like these days. And I'm just grateful that I get to do that. I could just sit in the silence and work on, and it will be a constant thing I work on. I'll continue to master it. It's not ever something we ever fully master, but learning how to shut off that internal dialogue, silence the mind, control the thoughts. So that's a big part of my journey. So that's really it. There's of course like so many other little things I do, like the health tools I have at home and how I use them daily, or what we do when one of us is ill, and my creativity, which I think is a huge part of healing, finding joy in life, like joy. If you're in a healing journey, by the way, I can't believe I didn't put this as an actual point, but if you're in a healing journey and you're not finding any joy, you're not going to heal, my friend, right? You have to be experiencing and feeling joy, because that will raise your vibration to the vibration of health, of wholeness, of homeostasis. So finding joy through creativity, finding joy through anything really that gives you joy. My God, I can't explain how important that is. So please find some joy in your life. I recently actually started a Substack blog because I needed something else to fill my time, because, because I'm crazy like that. I'm always, it's not that I've got much time, but anyway, I like to fill it with things I actually enjoy when I can, amongst all the other stuff I'm doing. So I wanted to start a Substack, and I didn't want it to be about health, because I love doing what I do here, and it's my whole life, and it's my whole work, and it's everything I put out every day. But I decided after spending a weekend with Elizabeth Gilbert in a creativity workshop that actually I wanted once a week to write about, just write about the things that fill me up. And so I started this Substack called Things I Dip in Coffee. So I'll link that in the show notes so you can check that out, because it's really fun, and it's really one of those things to just make you feel gooey inside, not because it's going to teach you anything about health, but because it's going to give you joy, and joy raises our vibration. So why the hell not? So all the above, everything I've said is how I keep it all together. I know I've said it already, but honestly, everything I learned and implemented myself, I teach on the Rise membership. It truly is the most comprehensive healing tool you'll ever find, because it is the complete approach I used and continue to use. So if you liked what you heard here and you're thinking, this all sounds amazing, but I need you to help guide me, I need a step-by-step, I can't just implement it through listening to an episode, that's what I created the Rise membership for. So you can head to the website and enroll in that to join our community. And if you have any questions based on anything I've said here, send them in to support@laurenvakneen.co.uk. And just put Q&A in the subject box, and do that ASAP so I get them in time for the Ask Me Anything episode happening in a few weeks. I'd love to answer your questions. We've already got loads, which I'm really excited to answer. So Kim is going to be not interviewing me, but I guess asking me, reading out the questions, and I'll be answering them. So I really hope that this has shown you what it takes to heal and why I believe anyone can do it. And yes, there's a lot, but I don't see it like that. I see it as empowering myself with knowledge and information that enables me to be my own primary healthcare provider, my own healer, and take full ownership of and responsibility for my well-being and my family's. So I hope this has inspired you to do the same. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Reconditioned. I am honestly so grateful to each and every person that tunes in. Thank you also for taking responsibility for your own well-being. You should know that just by choosing to listen to podcasts like this that further your well-being, you're moving more deeply into abundance consciousness. Now, don't forget, I have a bunch of free resources over at laurenvakneen.co.uk, as well as every recommendation you could ever need in regards to your well-being on the LV Recommends page, all categorized for your ease. Thank you also to our sponsors. These episodes would not be possible without them, so make sure to check them out and get some pretty awesome discounts on the show notes. And of course, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so that you can get updated each time a new one is released. Thank you. I appreciate you.